Act without taking action. Be busy without busyness. Taste what cannot be tasted. Magnify the small, multiply the few. Repay injury with kindness. Prepare for the difficult while it is still easy. Work on the big thing while it is still small. The difficult things of the world are initially easy. The big things of the world are initially small. The sage does not strive to achieve great things, so he is able to achieve greatness. Those who are quick to make promises are bound not to be trusted. What may seem easy is bound to become hard. The sage accepts his tasks as difficult. Therefore, they all become easy for him. This chapter has a lot to do with taking things that seem great and overwhelming and making them manageable. There are lots of times when we are confronted with tasks that seem completely overwhelming. However, often they only seem overwhelming because we either don't understand the task or we are making assumptions about it that are not correct. One such common assumption is that things have to be done a certain way. If you'll indulge me, there's an analogy from video games that I think is pretty applicable here. If you have any kind of experience with online multiplayer games, like Valorant, League of Legends, or Apex, to name a few, and these are just the ones I'm interested in, you will know that in these games there is a thing called the meta. If you don't have much experience with these kinds of games, the word meta is just an acronym for most effective tactics available. The meta is a word used to describe the playstyles, items, characters, and tactics that most people generally agree are optimal in the game at the current time. As the developers tweak the game from time to time, the meta tends to shift, and opinions change about how the game should be most optimally played. However, when the game Valorant first came out, I saw an example of how sometimes the meta, or what everybody agreed was most optimal, was just wrong. Valorant came out back during the pandemic as a new 5v5 tactical shooting game that featured different agents, or characters a player could choose to play as. Each agent has its own unique abilities and playstyle, and contributes to a team in a different way. When the game first came out, there was a character called Jet that almost everybody agreed was terrible. Despite having really fun dashing and movement abilities, everybody thought that she just didn't bring enough utility to the team to be considered viable. The developers made a couple small changes to her to try to incentivize people to pick her up, but nobody was convinced. Then suddenly, a few months later, players started pairing her with a gun called the Operator. Without getting too lost in the weeds here, the Operator is an extremely powerful gun that is a little high risk, high reward because of how slowly it fires. However, people realized that Jet was the perfect character to use the Operator because she could get a kill with it and then dash away to safety without being killed herself. And suddenly, the Jet meta was born. The funny thing is, Jet had never received any meaningful changes to her power level. In fact, today she is much weaker than she was on release, yet she remains a staple pick even at high levels of the game. It's not that Jet got stronger, it's just that people finally realized how to use her. The early meta that had dictated she was unplayable was wrong. This was an example from the gaming world, but the fact is that almost everything that people do is dominated by some sort of meta. The way we eat, the way we exercise, the way we sleep, work, play, find careers, find romantic partners, speak, dance, listen to music. Even the ways we think are subject to generally accepted metas, and we usually follow these metas without giving them any second thoughts. Now, we can't just assume that every meta is wrong, and that there is always something to be gained from going against the grain. As Tim Ferriss so aptly put it, quote, "Most people walk down the street on their legs. Does that mean that I walk down the street on my hands? Do I wear my underwear outside of my pants in the name of being different? Not usually, no. Then again, walking on my legs and keeping my underwear on the inside have worked just fine thus far. I don't fix it if it isn't broken." There are some things that are the meta for a good reason. However, we shouldn't assume that absolutely every meta has a good reason behind it either. Sometimes the meta can be improved. A lot of you might have heard the story about Dick Fosbury, the high jumper whose unconventional flopping jump at first won him only ridicule from his peers, and then eventually won him the 1968 Olympic gold medal. Now the Fosbury flop is the new meta for high jump, and it will be until somebody else reinvents it again. Having the courage, presence of mind, and intuition to see where you are imposing arbitrary rules about the way that something needs to be done is an important aspect of Wu Wei. Another assumption that we often make that makes tasks harder than they need to be is that we have to have the whole process figured out from the beginning. This is almost always just plain unrealistic. Since we are trying to do something that is usually manifestly impossible, that is, see the future, the task seems way harder than it actually is. At the beginning of every difficult and complex task, there is a simple first step. If we can condition ourselves to just take the first simple step without hesitancy and without overthinking, we will find that our ability to tackle great tasks is greatly increased. Using an example from my own life, I've been wanting to upload the episodes for this Tao Te Ching series onto a podcast, so that people who want to listen to it while they're driving or doing other things can do so. However, it seemed so overwhelming to me to do this because I don't have the slightest idea how podcasts work. So I left this project undone for months. However, the other day I thought to myself, why don't I just take the first step and see where that leads? So I did. I went onto YouTube and I looked up how to start a podcast. Long story short, it turns out that it was actually way easier than I thought. At the end of the day, after about an hour and a half of work, I had my first podcast episode uploaded on Spotify. You can go listen to it and follow it if you want. It's just called Tao Te Ching Explained, and it's spelled with a T, not with a D. Or you can also look up Sanjoy. To be honest, I was shocked at how easy it actually was. I did hesitate to tell you guys this story, because now you guys will be able to hold me accountable for uploading the rest of them. Because now I'm confronted with the task of having to do this 63 more times, and counting, and with getting them onto other platforms, such as Apple Podcasts. Which of course means I just need to take the first step again and see where it leads. Long story short, this tip doesn't solve all of your problems, but it certainly can help. And please do be patient with me about the podcast thing. I know I'm sitting here talking about how to make great tasks seem easier, and I am employing these things in my own life, but as I'm sure you'll discover for yourself, these tips don't make the tasks go away. At the end of the day, I still get really easily overwhelmed by things like uploading podcasts and working with insurance and getting car repairs done and things like that. It's a little vulnerable for me to say this because I really want to project an image of a person who's got their life all together, since trying to figure out life is kind of the point of this channel. But I guess I just want you guys to know that I struggle with this stuff as much as anyone else. And a lot of this channel is just me sharing things that I'm finding that are currently helping me and that I'm trying to work on, rather than me relating this wisdom that I've learned over the course of a lifetime that has turned me into some kind of Taoist master. I hope you've all realized that I'm not some kind of Taoist master. I have so many problems and issues that I'm working on, and although I do believe that I can change, I also know that it's going to take time. And I guess I've just decided that I have things to say, and I'm going to say them, and I can't wait until I'm perfect to do that, or it will never get done. But now, I'm out of time for today, so we'll leave it there for now. And I just want to tell you, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for chapter 64. Peace and blessings.